This drum fill sucks. I'm walking over to my drums so that we can break this out. How many times have you written a drum fill and you're like, this just kind of sucks. There's nothing to it. I don't really like it, but you want there to be something. I struggled with that for a very long time myself, and then I came up with a system. It's called the Big 7. It's a principle I talk about with my students. And in this lesson, I'm gonna break out how you can take any pattern or any drum fill and make it more musical. You can unsuck it, if you will. You can get it unstuck. And this concept revolutionized this with myself. The sheet music, as always, is available for you in the video description. Please go grab that. Now let's get to it. So let's dive into this. How do we make our drum fills not suck? How do we make them more musical? Are there tools that we can use no matter what drum fill we're playing to make them better than they are when they start, and to give us options to grow them from there? One of the concepts, there's several large concepts that I teach with my students in the Drum Better Daily program, and this is one of the cornerstones of my teaching, really what we're going to be talking about here, and it's called the Big 7. It's 7 big picture principles that we can apply to any situation to make the exercise, the groove, the lick we're working on, the song, to make it more musical and to narrow down the amount of material we have to really focus on in our practice time. I can't stress how important this concept is in my own practice time, and whenever I teach it to students, how much it kind of expands their playing and helps them grow on a deeper level. So I hope you'll put it to use too. But before we can do that, we really need to come up with something that we're going to be working with, okay? So we're going to be working with, let's come up with a drum fill. It's going to be simply this. Right, left, kick. We're going to play that 4 times. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a. And then we're going to round it out with 4 single stroke 16th notes. We're kind of using a dotted 8th note structure, and we'll expand on that. You can hear drummers like Eloy playing with Slipknot. I did a video not too long ago. Check him out playing this same structure for a drum fill, although he's taking it a lot further. Okay, I think you can agree with me, that's pretty plain white rice of a drum fill, right? It kind of sucks. There's not much to it. Now we need to start applying some principles to it to give it some depth so that we can apply it to our playing and so we can have some fun with it. So let's talk about the Big 7. The Big 7 are timing, groove, technique, articulation, dynamics, melody, and flow. And you're like, hold up. Hold up. We're going to break each one of those out in depth and show you how to apply it to this. And then you can take them in your own practice time and use it. Okay, so the first one we're going to look at is pretty simple. Timing. We need to make sure that the timing of whatever drum fill we're playing is good. And so how do we do that? Well, you check it with a metronome. Typically when I'm learning something on the drums, I don't start with a metronome. I try to work out the sticking or work out the groove with the drum fill. Then I move to a metronome. So let's take this to a metronome, and we'll have 16th notes on the metronome at about 50 BPM. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my notes are locking exactly with that. I'm checking the timing to make sure that that works. 4 E and a. Now again, no matter the exercise you're working through, we can check timing. Once we get it under our hands, it's like, okay, let me check my timing with this. Let me lock it in. Let me make sure that it's there. The next thing we can move to is groove, okay? Now timing and groove are 2 separate things. Timing are how we're placing the notes within the bar. Groove is how those notes feel. So to me, timing, if we're looking at sheet music here, timing, and you can download the sheet music for this exercise. It's in the video description. Timing are these black notes on the page. That's to me what timing is. We're lining it up to that grid. But groove, look at all that space in between each one of those notes. To me, that's where groove is found. Timing is found in those notes. Groove is found in the space in between those notes. So now we want to make sure that, okay, not only is this in time, so what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to take those 16th notes away, and then I'm going to make sure that this is feeling good while I'm playing it, that it's feeling like something. You don't want to play a groove and that feel real great, and then all of a sudden you play a fill and it just feels stiff. I know you've heard players play that before. We don't want to do that. I mean, I've sounded like that before. Here we go. 3. So what we want to do is make sure whatever groove we're playing, that drum fill feels in the pocket with what we were just doing. And you're like, Steven, that still kind of sounds pretty plain. It does. We haven't gotten there yet, okay? The next one, the third one, is going to be technique. Technique is one I kind of go through very quickly, because if we've worked on technique in other parts of our playing, really what we're doing is we're saying, okay, am I using a correct technique? Is there a better sticking? Is there a better, you know, could I use fingers? Could I use wrists? And French, German, like we're going through the technique of molar stroke, you know, was this a downstroke, upstroke, all the technical things, just to make sure that it's there. Most of the time it's a very quick thing, but sometimes you'll come across it and go, oh wow, it's really holding things up. I need to work on my technique. A good example of that would be if we're playing a fast one-handed 16th note pattern. On the hi-hat, we're going to need to work on that and make sure that we've got the technique going that's going to make that sound fluid. The fourth one is dynamics. Now, dynamics and articulation, which is the fifth one, they're two different things. All right, so dynamics is how loud we're playing or how soft we're playing. And you can speak softly and speak with authority. Or you can speak loudly and speak with it, right? We can do all kinds of things with our voice, and the same is with our playing. So now what I want to do is I want to put this to the metronome, and I want to make sure that I'm playing with good timing, I'm playing with good groove, my technique's good. Now, can I play it dynamically? Can I play it at a whisper? And can I play it loudly? So I'm just going to go through that and try. 3, 4. This is one we don't check very often because we don't think, we kind of in our practice time, it's like I'm playing. But when you get on a gig, they may be like, hey, that's too loud for the room. I remember there was a time in my playing when I had played on Bourbon Street, real loud rock music. Then I went back to university and I was playing jazz, very soft. And I came back and sat in with the band I used to play with. And the bass player turned around and he's like, what happened to you? What are you talking about? He said, you used to be this amazing rock player, just thrashing it out. And now you're just like hitting real light, this little, you know, jazz players, but he was joking with me. Well, what had happened was I could not play those things at all volumes. I was practicing and playing only at one volume. So then I said, okay. So I would set certain dynamic days. Monday would be, you know, pianissimo. Tuesday would be fortissimo. Wednesday might be mezzo, you know, piano. So I'm going through these different dynamic ranges so that I have a lot of variety in my playing. And when I say something, it can mean something in my playing, even if it's just a short drum fill. Okay, this is one that confuses some people. It's called articulation. All right, if the dynamics are the temperature of the room, this is an example I give. Dynamics would be the temperature of this room. This room is probably 70 degrees because that's what the HVAC's set on, right? But it's summer, so I could have had these cymbals sitting in my car, and if they were sitting in my car, they could be 100, 110 degrees because it's hot, right? So the cymbal could be 110 degrees while the room is 70 degrees. And that's what articulation is. Dynamics is the overall dynamic volume that we're playing at within the piece of the music or wherever we are. Articulation is how we're treating each individual note, and that's just not volume. That could be an accent, that could be a rim shot, that could be I'm playing it on the rim instead of a rim shot, that could be a diddle or a buzzed note, an unaccented ghosted note, right? All of those to me are different articulations. And so if we start playing different articulations with this, let's just add some accents to this drum fill. So, all right, we're gonna accent the first two right hand notes. So it's gonna go. On the third iteration of that sticking, I'm gonna ghost the right hand and accent the left hand. On the fourth iteration of that pattern, I'm going to accent both notes. With articulation, I'm not only accenting the right hand in those first two patterns, I'm ghosting the left hand. In the third iteration, I'm ghosting the right hand and accenting the left hand, okay? So it's not enough just to accent one, because that comes out sounding... That's not how I want it. Hear the difference? It goes from... That second one, it's got some movement, it's got some feel to it. And in the 4 single notes, let's accent the 2 right hands. So we've gone through our timing, we've gone through our groove, we've gone through technique, dynamics, articulation. Let's do something else for articulation. On the second bass drum that we play, so it's gonna go. Instead of playing 1 bass drum note, let's add some articulation. Let's play 2 bass drum notes right there. Let's diddle it. Right, so whenever I start articulating these different notes, and we could do that, we could make a million different articulations for this. It's one of my favorite ones. It's how we're phrasing this. We can really make that fill start to pop, right? Instead of going. It's like the difference to me of a nuanced player versus just somebody, you know, the monkey banging the cymbals. It's like, come on, let's add some musicality to that. So my degree is in jazz studies, and what that means is literally nothing, except that I spent a lot of time looking at jazz music. And in jazz music, especially with the drumming, Elvin, Tony, Roy Haynes, you know, like all of them, they're working on their melodic phrases. There's a great video of Elvin explaining melody whenever he's playing around the drums.
If we understand the melody, then we can understand how that rhythmic phrase can be developed.
So I think a lot melodically, and then you have players, I mentioned him earlier, Eloy, he just comes to mind because, and there's Tony, Vinny, you know, Steve Gadd, Steve Smith, all the great players. They think melodically, it makes their fills a lot easier to construct because they're trying to construct something around a melody instead of just constructing something around a bunch of notes that you come up with. So when we think melodically, I'm trying to think about what's the phrase that I'm wanting to say. Let's keep the same accent patterns, and for this, we're gonna play the first right hand on the snare drum. We're going to play the second right hand on the floor tom. Then in that third iteration of that pattern, I'm going to play that accented left hand on the high tom. Then for the fourth iteration, I'm going to come back to the snare drum for 2 accents. Then with the 4/16 notes, accented right hand here and an accented right hand on the floor tom. So that whole pattern together slowly. Or we could slow it down and put it to a little bit of a funkier groove. And now we have the 7th one, and again, in your practice time, we want to take each one of these things, even if we're playing an exercise. I can take that exercise and I can add dynamic. So I'm adding dynamics there, I'm adding articulation, I'm adding melody and phrasing. All of these, they can apply to any exercise, okay? So go as deep as you can. The 7th one is one, I leave it for last, and it's flow. That's whenever we get something under our hands, we've worked through it, now we want to integrate it into our playing. We want to move it from our practice bag to our gig bag, right? We want to introduce it to everybody else that we have in our playing. There's a lot of things that you can play on the drums, but when you try to pull them out live, they're very stiff. That's not what we want. What we want is, I want everything to sound just like you're in the moment, you're in flow. There's a great book that talks about that. There's actually a book called Flow, but then there's another one, Effortless Mastery by Kenny Werner. Fantastic book that talks about that flow state. So that's the big 7. That's how you can make any drum fill more interesting than it is when you first write it. I mentioned the Drum Better Daily program earlier. That's my online drum school. It has been open now, it's hard to believe, for 13 years. We're going on year 14. And so I would love to have you be a part of it. There's song breakdowns, there's, great technology that helps you learn those songs, over 70 choruses, the forums where you can get to know everybody. We have guest artists and access to all the old guest artists we've had. And then we also have weekly student calls where we do tech talk calls, we do Q&A calls where I'm on there workshopping with everybody. I'd love to have you be a part of it. The link is in the video description for you to go check that out.